Hi goers and growers, my name's Allison and I'm back. So for this week, I wanted to talk about 5 things that I've learned since I started doing seedlings. Had to start over again. The first thing I would do is I would have started earlier. And I'll tell you the reason why. I live in Zone 9B, which is, Northern California, Central Valley. Well, this weekend, it was 92 degrees at some point this week. And when that happened, I thought to myself, if I had started my tomato seedlings in January, by now they would have been flourishing and thriving. So that would probably be the first thing I would do. So, if you live in a zone that happens to not be Zone 9B, or if you're worried about the weather, I would recommend getting a grow light. Now this weekend what happened was the weather's starting to change around. It's supposed to rain tomorrow. It's about 70-ish. So what I did was I left the plants out for a while, and then I put them underneath the grow light at night, so that way it can make up for the sun that's not there. So that would probably be the first thing I would recommend to do. The second thing, if I had to do it all over again, is I know people love, they want to be all environmental, so they love having these peat pots. And I thought, I wanted to be environmental too. I thought, why, I saw people with the plastic, I felt kind of snotty, like they were ruining the environment. But then I went to Lowe's and I bought some tomato plants at Lowe's. And when I bought the tomato plants at Lowe's, they had plastic containers. So I decided that I would use the plastic containers when I repotted some of my plants. And the one thing I noticed that when I did this was that the plastic containers retained water more than this container did, the peat moss. So I think going forward, I would probably just use the plastic, and I could probably use some empty plastic containers that we have at the house, maybe some empty containers like for my yogurt or cottage cheese, and just put some holes in the bottom. I was also thinking about maybe using some old soda bottles for that, because if I use the soda bottles, I could just cut the half of it off and then put some dirt in there, and then put put some dirt, put it and let it kind of grow out, and then that way it would grow that way, and that way I'm putting something that I would normally be sitting in a landfill to use. Sit into these, and for all you people who are the environmental police, just know that these are used with recyclable plastic cells. So going forward, I'm going to use these whenever I'm doing my seedlings. And it has a little top over the cover, and again, it retains water really good, and it has a place with the water below it. And I only got this for about $5 over at Walmart. Going to the garden right now. So let's just start walking through the garden. And now that we're walking into the garden, I'm going to explain the third change I would have made. The third change I would have made is everything doesn't need to be in a pot being seeded. Let me give an example. If you look at this chamomile right here, those were direct sown. And then I have some beets over here that I just pulled out the ground, and at the end of the video I'll show you a picture at the end of the video of how our beet and carrot harvest went. But the root vegetables I planted into the ground. Now I was told that you don't use root vegetables in seedlings, so I was fine with that. But one of the things that I did do, that I now going forward that I won't do, is I put the watermelon seeds into a container, and that turned out to be not desirable. I mean, they kind of grew up and then they kind of petered out. So I think going forward, certain plants like watermelons, root plants, those type of plants, I would just go ahead and plant directly in the ground. And then I was told not to do parsley, in the ground, to actually just, put them under the seeding lights. But they kind of petered out on me. So I think next time I'm just gonna, direct sow the parsley. Now the fourth thing that I would probably do is I would probably use bigger containers or deeper containers. That's the reason why I got the cells that I got. They weren't as big as the other ones, but they were much more deeper. And the reason why is that plants, just like people, need room to grow. And I felt like a lot of the plants that I put into the small cells, they petered out. And so, so I had to replant them quickly. There's a whole bunch of them that were in one cell, and I replanted them. I put them in some pots, and that turned out okay. But I think going forward, for things like, tomatoes or bell peppers or any of those plants, I think I would just put them in a bigger container when I plant them. The smaller items would be things like the lettuce. Those things I'd put in the smaller cells, and then I would replant them into the ground. And that's probably one of the other changes I would make. The last change I think I would have made is I would have planted more variety of plants. Now, as you can see, I have this wonderful, wonderful amount of mint leaves. I have, ample amount of chamomile, and that's going to make some great tea. But my original target, and it's going to continue to be my original target, is I wanted 70% of the food that we eat to come from this garden. And so for that to happen, I need to actually start planting items that we would actually eat. So I'm going to try to use the real estate more wisely this time. So I'm going to try to plant more things. Like you can see, you got that pepper plant right here, which, by the way, that came from seed. I'm very proud of that one. That one sprung up from seed. And as you saw in our last videos, we have a lot of tomato plants right now. We're going to have a ton of tomatoes. Looks like it's going to be pepper and tomatoes, but we can't just live off pepper and tomatoes. So going forward, I'm going to try to plant more items that we would eat. Like last night, we actually ended up eating the beets and carrots that we planted from the garden. I got some onions going on over there. That's always ample. I'll probably do some garlic, and I'm going to try to plant as many plants. And we have the lettuce, which is always a good item to do. So, with all this being said, with the seedlings and the plantings and the things that I've changed, would I do this again? And the answer would be yes. And I'm going to tell you why I would do it again. Number one, this garden has, like for instance, this lettuce. You can't get this lettuce at the grocery store. It's some great lettuce. So I would do this because that way I can plant things that I normally can't get at the grocery store, like lettuce, maybe some okra, there's other plants. I wanted to do lemon cucumbers. So I think that having a garden, there's more variety of seeds than there are of actual plants in the nursery. So that way you can have, different varieties of plants, unusual varieties of plants that, you don't normally see at the store. The second reason I would do it is because of cost. And what I mean by cost is this. Those tomato plants that I have sitting in the window, I spent $2.50 for the seeds. The potting soil was maybe $4 or, but it's able to produce amples and amples amount of plants. I haven't even used all the seeds packaged. So, I'm going to be able to plant a ton of tomatoes out of that crop. Now, I have these beautiful plants right here, which were my backup plants. This is a cherry tomato, this is a beef tomato, and of course this is another beefsteak tomato. Now these plants are wonderful, and squash and cucumber plants out in this area. And the birds got to them. And I paid about anywhere between $2.50 to maybe $4 for those plants. Even though these plants are doing great and they're going to be thrive, they're going to be wonderful. Two out of those two plants out there right now that I paid almost $4 for, gone. So that was money wasted. So so no matter how many seeds that I'm planting, even if a few of those seeds turn out, then it's definitely worth the time. And then the third reason why I would do it is just the pride of seeing something going from seed to full blossom producing fruit. That to me is worth it. Just the joy. Gardening's a labor of love, just like cooking's a labor of love, and I just enjoy the whole process. And even though this is wonderful that I have these plants out here and these plants are going to be thriving and nourishing, it is going to be a joy to see what happens to the seedlings that we've been working on in our window, growing, nurturing, and seeing what happens when it comes into full fruition. So if you just want to hang in there with us for the journey, because this is going to be a journey, because remember, this garden is going to be 70% of our food, and you can tell that there's a lot of real estate here. So I realize that this is just going to be an experience, and that I just need to enjoy the journey, and hopefully you will join the journey with me. So that being said, you know, if you want to keep joining this journey with me, I'm going to make sure I try to post a video at least every week. So go ahead and like, share, and subscribe, and keep going and keep growing. And I look forward to seeing you for our next video. Bye.